American men and women, all of them Somali Muslims hailing from Minnesota, and all of them carrying U.S. passports. Some have been suicide bombers. Others star in propaganda videos. Their exodus from the Twin Cities began in 2007 with a call to jihad in Somalia. Today, their destination is the Islamic State. The problem in previous years for the Somali Muslim community here in Minneapolis was young men leaving mosques like this to travel back home and join the al-Qaeda-linked terror group Al-Shabaab. Now the problem has shifted, and it's much deeper.
Since July of 2012, we haven't had any kids leave to go join Al-Shabaab, but we have had several leave now to go join ISIS.
Bob Fletcher is the former sheriff of Ramsey County, which includes the city of St. Paul.
What ISIS is selling now is an opportunity to build something, to build a new society, and that's very, very exciting for a lot of kids.
At least 12 Twin Cities residents have traveled to Syria to join terrorist groups in recent years. All were Somalis, except Douglas McCain, an African-American convert killed fighting alongside ISIS last summer. One Somali-American ISIS recruit even worked at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport before joining the Islamic State.
The recruiters get hold of these young people. They mentor them. They assess them. They identify them.
Abdurazak Bihi is director of the Somali Advocacy Center in Minneapolis. His teenage nephew fell prey to terrorist recruiters and was killed in Somalia in 2008.
Nobody would believe that a Somali American kid who grew up here had nothing to do with Somalia, no cultural or anything or language, would be brainwashed, radicalized by the same people, by some of the people we trusted so much, and return him to hellfire in Somalia.
Bihi has received threats for speaking out against the radicalization of his Somali Muslim community. He says he's fighting an uphill battle here as unemployed young people respond to the message of jihad.
We are trying with everything we can, but our challenges are plenty because we don't have the resources to work with. It's zero.
The Twin Cities are home to the largest Somali population in North America. Many of the more than 100,000 Somali residents came as part of a taxpayer-funded refugee resettlement program run by the U.S. government. Assimilation has been a major problem. A large number live in neighborhoods like Little Mogadishu. This is a traditional East African market. It's the kind you'd see in Somalia, but it's here in the very heart of Minneapolis, and it shows the changing face and the growth of the Somali community here in the Twin Cities. War-torn Somalia has had no functioning central government for nearly 25 years and has become a hotbed for radical Islam. Somali community activist Omar Jamal left behind that chaos only to confront a similar menace in the Twin Cities. He says terror recruiters are having success beyond just the high school dropout types.
The idea has always been ISIS and even Al-Shabaab target those kids. But we later came to find out that even A students in universities and colleges are also vulnerable to this powerful propaganda machine.
According to Jamal, radical Islamic ideology is a powerful recruitment tool for ISIS, and the Islamic State's success breeds attraction.
ISIS thus far succeeded in putting up an image where they are righting the wrongs and respecting the Muslim world, bring respect back, and it's working for them.
Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Minneapolis.
While Americans live with the possibility of another major terrorist attack, others around the world have already faced it head on. Some people have lost everything, while others have stood up against the terrorists and gave their lives for their faith. The army of ISIS swallowed up parts of Iraq like a darkness. In just one day, tens of thousands of Christians fled villages like Karakush and Bartilla, just about 25 miles away. Most have come here to Erbil with nothing more than the clothes on their back.
They take everything from the house, from the store, everything. And they take like machine, everything, because they are Christian. Just the name Christian. They hate Christian especially. We don't know why.
It was leave or die.
They say if anyone don't become like Muslim, we're gonna kill it. Kill it. Each one, from baby and woman, one, old man.
We don't have anything here. They bombed the churches and already took our houses. We have nothing here. No money, no ID, no travel documents.
What's happening now to the Christians, to the Yazidis, to the minorities, and like in the last couple of days, mostly to the Christians, is a genocide. What's happening is what happened 200 years ago with the Jews.
Dr. Ahmed hears stories of the barbarism of ISIS.
That ISIS was killing, shooting the kids and the people, and they are laying them on the ground, and they bring tractors that they walk over them in the front of their families. They take women out of their houses. So let's say each family that they have three daughters, they would take one.
Ken and Andrew White told CBN News of one horrific story of 4 Christian girls and ISIS.
ISIS turned up and they said to the children, "You say the words that you will follow Muhammad." And the children, all under 15, 4 of them, they said, "No, we love Yeshua. We have always loved Yeshua. We have always followed Yeshua. Yeshua has always been with us." They said, "Say the words." They said, "No, we can't." They chopped all their heads off. How do you respond to that? You just cry. They're my children. That's what we have been going through. That's what we are going through.
In the wake of the ISIS advance, thousands of ethnic Yazidis escaped to a mountain outside the town of Sinjar, while these Christians found shelter at this Catholic compound in Erbil. A few weeks ago, these families fled when ISIS cleansed Mosul of Christians. ISIS gave them an ultimatum.
They gave us 4 choices: either convert to Islam, or paying tax, or leaving the city, or the sword. They are using the sword to cut off hand and also beheading others. So I don't think this is the behavior of human beings, but wild animals do that.
ISIS looted their properties and left them destitute. They took this woman's dentures, wedding ring, and documents.
They took everything. We asked them, please give us something to show that we owned our car, our home. They said, here you have nothing.
ISIS searched the home of one Christian in Mosul and discovered these 2 New Testaments, one with a camouflage on the cover and the other with an American flag inside. They accused him of being both a missionary and a spy. ISIS put his name on a list. He told his story, but asked us to hide his identity.
Hey, stop, get back. You are a Christian. The terrorist told me we will kill you.
Sometimes the pressure is overwhelming.
Jesus, save me. Oh, the terrorist. Forgive them. Forgive them. Because they didn't know. They didn't know what they were, what they act.
Even though these Christians are the original people of the region, many simply want to leave. They're pleading for the U.S., the UN, and Pope Francis to help.
We are asking the responsible states of the international community to come and look and see how all the people are living here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Erbil, Kurdistan.
Here at home, the landslide Republican midterm election victory was just a few months ago. Already, politicians and voters are looking ahead to the presidential race in 2016. CBN News recently spent some time with a man who could easily be described as the most unusual candidate, Dr. Ben Carson. David Brody brings us that story.
Dr. Ben Carson is known as a straight shooter, whether it's pool or talking politics.
You know, Obamacare is really, I think, the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery.
His no-nonsense approach captivates conservative audiences, and now the massively organized Draft Ben Carson for President movement has positioned him near the top of presidential polls. Indeed, it looks like he might be ready to move from medicine to politics. But first, he says God would have to grab him by the collar.
And how is that conversation going with God about this potential presidential run? Has he grabbed you by the collar yet? I read an article about that.
I feel fingers.
A presidential run would only add to Carson's achievements.
My life has been truly amazing. I think about it all the time.
His well-documented journey is told in the book and movie Gifted Hands. It begins in Detroit, where he was raised by a single mom. Poor grades followed, along with a violent temper that led him to a stabbing incident with a friend. On that day, the knife miraculously hit the boy's belt buckle, giving young Ben Carson another chance to turn his life around. And he took it. Alone in his house, he picked up a Bible, gave his life to Jesus, and asked the Lord to take away his violent temper.
Never had another anger problem since that day. And some people say you just learn how to cover it up, but when the Lord fixes a problem, he fixes it. He doesn't do a paint job. So, it's virtually impossible to make me angry now.
And if the doctor becomes a presidential candidate, he says his cool demeanor is going to help him.
I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to get angry. It's just not going to happen.
This could be the essence of a Carson for President campaign. A calm doctor dispensing ideas and leading a conversation on pressing issues, seeking reconciliation.
Americans have to recognize that we, the American people, are not each other's enemies. The enemies are those people who try to divide everybody up.
For example, those calling pro-lifers anti-women or traditional marriage supporters anti-gay.
They've been reading a book by Saul Alinsky called Rules for Radicals, which says never have a conversation with your enemies because that humanizes them. And your job is to demonize them.
Candy Carson, his wife of nearly 40 years, knows that her husband will be demonized by his critics if he runs. She understands the stakes.
Our country is going a way that's different from what our founding fathers were thinking, and we wanted to make sure he felt really called to wake people up. And that's what he's been doing.
The Carsons plan to lean on their Christian faith to get them through.
In the Bible it says the Lord doesn't give you more than you can handle, right? And a lot of times you feel like, are you sure? Are you really sure? But he does give you what you need.
We recognize that, we are being instruments in the hand of God. He is the one who really orchestrates all of this.
Right now, Carson is putting together his platform. He wants a fairer and flatter tax structure, lower corporate taxes, and health savings accounts for all. But his number one issue, the out-of-control debt.
Unless we get a grip on that, why wouldn't we suffer the same fates as other pinnacle nations who have allowed debt to encumber their progress?
Carson also will not let political correctness get in his way. He plans to speak his mind on issues like the roots of this country.
We are, in fact, a Judeo-Christian nation. And I think that's a huge part of our strength.
Or comparing our current government to Nazi Germany.
And I know you're not supposed to say Nazi Germany, but I don't care about political correctness.
He talks straight about President Obama, too.
Our president is very much like Putin. Oh, well, gee, there's no resistance here. Okay, well, I'll just keep going. And the resistance needs to be there.
What would you want to tell him?
I would want to tell him, sir, I understand that you have very defined ideals of what you think America is, but you work for the people. They don't work for you.
Constitutional authority, he has overstepped that, you believe, in many instances?
Without question. And hopefully, the legislators in Congress will understand what they need to do.
What do they need to do?
They need to have a spine. They need to stand up, because once you allow someone to take liberties with the system, they're not going to stop.
Carson says it's up to the people to change America's direction.
People need to recognize that they do have power. but they do have to exercise. It is our God-given duty to exercise that power.
And he's praying for God to show his power in a mighty way.
Do you think this country needs a spiritual awakening?
We most definitely need a spiritual awakening. I mean, look at the direction that we're going in. Mm-hmm. Absolute absurdity.
And the good doctor seems ready to tackle that absurdity in the wild world of presidential politics. David Brody, CBN News.
And there it is.
In West Palm Beach, Florida.
That could be a chance for revenge.
These days, we almost expect the government to monitor our phone calls, email, and even what we buy with our credit cards. Few people, however, know that our schools are gathering more and more information on their students. They claim it will help improve education. But does it violate students' right to privacy? Heather Sells brings us the story.
Once upon a time, schools used folders and files to track students' progress. Today, teachers like Sarah Cleforth use their laptops to collect information throughout the day.
Using data is a great way for me to be able to differentiate and cater my instruction to different kids' needs.
The problem, what happens to that data after it's collected? Today, 95% of school districts use vendors and so-called computer clouds to store all kinds of student information. But policies for protecting that data are generally weak and non-transparent. A recent study found only 25% of schools tell parents where their kids' information is stored. Another scary part, much of that data can be sold or marketed. Plus, many contracts allow vendors to keep student information forever.
We found in our research that essentially every school system across the country was collecting data. But when you ask school officials about what they were doing, they often were confused.
In Colorado, concerns over privacy led the state to completely sever its ties with its student data collection program. At issue, concerns over very personal information.
I think we have generally not a lot of understanding about what level of data is collected on our kids in schools, what protections are offered.
A year ago, moms Sunny Flynn and Rachel Strickland began investigating their district's plan to use a cloud service known as InBloom. First, it sounded good, and then they began to realize the amount of data that InBloom intended to collect.
When you really studied the InBloom infrastructure, the theory is that they can track our children all the way down to the keystroke level. And that's where I started to get very alarmed.
While their district didn't plan to use InBloom to that degree, Flynn and Strickland realized it could easily happen, where the district not only tracked kids' answers on the computer, but the way they thought to arrive at their answers. They also discovered that 8 other states plan to use InBloom. The even bigger picture, InBloom is just one service in a huge $8 billion education technology market. Much of it hinges on collecting what are known as data points on kids. Check out this promise from a tech whiz at a White House conference on education.
Because Newton can figure out things like you learn math best in the morning between 8:40 and 9:13 a.m. You learn science best in 42-minute bite sizes.
InBloom also attracted school districts by providing a convenient way to access student information from different sources. Another incentive, the Department of Education offers special funding to states that develop ways to track student information from preschool to post-college. Lots of good reasons for signing up, but Elliot Asp, Special Assistant to Colorado's Education Commissioner, admits his state didn't think carefully enough about privacy when committing to InBloom.
It's almost too much of a good thing. Gosh, we can collect this data and we can make it available to teachers to do this.
Colorado and 8 other states ultimately decided to end their contracts with InBloom, leading the startup to close up shop just last month. In doing so, it acknowledged that building public support will require more time and resources than anyone could have anticipated. But even with InBloom's demise, the challenge of how best to store and protect student data is far from over.
The states that we're in touch with are saying we need to be very careful about this, about the language we use, about the kind of data we're collecting. We need to be much more transparent.
One issue, changes in the federal student privacy law known as FERPA.
These recent FERPA regulations allow schools to collect more information.
and allow schools also to disclose additional information.
And privacy expert Kalia Barnes adds the scope of information is much broader.
We're talking not just GPAs and test scores. We're talking social security numbers. We're talking about teen pregnancy information. We're talking mental health information, socioeconomic status, issues like that.
For Strickland Flynn and other privacy-minded parents across the country, it's time to hit pause on this technology wave before it goes too far.
I think that the technology has simply gotten ahead of the leadership, and I think it's time that everybody slow down and really understand what we're getting ourselves into.
Going forward, tough questions remain, like how can parents access this data on their children? And can they opt out? Also, how long is data kept? And who decides what will be deleted?
Once you let the information out, you can never get it back. And so really the goal for parents at this point is to minimize the amount of data that is collected on our children, and then whatever is collected, protect it with maximum protections.
For these moms and many other tech-savvy parents, technology represents a double-edged sword. It can help teachers like Cleforth individualize children's education. They worry, however, that personal pieces of information collected on their kids could someday be used against them. Reporting in Denver, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Everybody knows that half of all marriages end in divorce. There's just one problem. It's not true. Paul Strand looks at the myths about divorce and the reality of successful marriages in America.
Harvard-trained researcher Shanti Feldhahn works with her husband Jeff to help people with their marriages and relationships. At one point, this Atlanta-based couple believed and shared information that most marriages are unhappy, and 50% of them end in divorce, even in the church.
I didn't know. I've stood up on stage and said every one of these wrong statistics.
Then 8 years ago, Shanti asked her assistant for specific research on divorce for an article she was writing. Neither of them could find any real numbers, and that kicked off a personal and long crusade to find the truth. And it was a revelation, as she reveals in her book, The Good News About Marriage.
First-time marriages, probably about 20 to 25% have ended in divorce on average. Now, okay, that's still too high, right? But it's a whole lot better than what people think it is.
Shanti and Jeff point out the 50% figure came from projections of what researchers thought the divorce rate would become.
But the divorce rate has been dropping. We've never hit those numbers. We've never gotten close.
So imagine the implications of this. Half of marriages do not end in divorce. They never have. So the chances of yours making it aren't a measly 50-50. They're more like 70, 75, 80%. That can give couples a lot of hope. And hope is often the fuel a marriage needs to survive and even thrive. Shanti says hopelessness itself can actually lead to divorce.
That sense of futility itself pulls down marriages. And the problem is we have this culture-wide feeling of futility about marriage.
Christian psychotherapist Angel Davis agrees.
The Bible says hope deferred, it makes our hearts sick. And we are so influenced by numbers and by culture.
And it's based on all these discouraging beliefs that many of them just aren't true.
Jeff Feldhahn says anytime he tells people about his wife's findings, they're stunned.
Their mouth drops open and they're just shocked because they go, I can't believe I believed this all these years. And I've heard it so many times, and I've heard it from the pulpit so many times.
This is a great chance to stand up and say, we were all fooled, not anymore.
To that end, Shanti's been working to spread this news to pastors and other leaders as fast as she can. It totally changed Virginia pastor Daniel Floyd's counseling because he had bought into fictional research.
I told her, I said, I've said this, I've taught this.
He's sure it will change a generation of marriage counseling.
I think it's significant and could change the conversation from one that is, wow, it's just the way it is, and half of you are going to make it, half of you are not, and change the conversation to know historically, overwhelming majority have made it, and you can make it.
We know in psychology that what you believe affects how you feel, and then it leads to actions. So when other people are accomplishing something we think is hopeless, it gives us hope. And then we start feeling different and then start acting different.
Shanti says a majority of us believe only about 30% of marriages are happy.
Most people think most marriages are just kind of just kind of rolling along. And they're shocked when I tell them that the actual average is 80%. 80% of marriages are happy.
Not knowing that often leads couples to avoid marriage and just shack up instead.
Like, if I'm just going to get divorced and I'm not going to be happy, why bother getting married, right? And it's based on a lie. That feeling is based on a lie.
Pastor Floyd says these new facts can be a game changer.
I think really helps people in the challenging moments to say, if I'll just stick with it, then there's a good chance I'm going to make it the distance.
With hope, you feel that you can make it through, even though you're in a tough patch.
And Shanti agrees the numbers prove most of the unhappily married can turn it around.
The studies show that if they stay married for 5 years, that almost 80% of those will be happy 5 years later.
The good news about marriage reveals more, like the fact the divorce rate among those active in their church is 27 to 50% lower than among non-churchgoers. Shanti's hope is that once people learn the truth, that they will spread it far and wide.
We need to change the paradigm of how we think and talk about marriage, from marriage being in trouble and all this discouraging stuff to saying, no, wait, most marriages are strong and happy for a lifetime. That makes a total difference to a couple's feeling that, you know what, most people get through this and we can too.
Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Atlanta.
Up next, we'll unravel the mystery of the 4 blood moons, find out what they mean for biblical prophecy, and how they relate to the turmoil in the Middle East after this. And later, days before the big game, the Seattle Seahawks redefine what it means to be a champion. See how faith motivates the players and coaches alike.
CBNnews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
Efrem Graham, CBN News, New York.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore. CBNnews.com at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see.
I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
Embassy in Washington, Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News.
The source for your news, CBNnews.com.
Well, the stage is set for a Super Bowl for the ages. It's the New England Patriots versus the Seattle Seahawks, who have earned a shot at back-to-back championship titles. After a last-minute miracle comeback, several Seahawks boldly bowed on the field to give thanks and prayer. As CBN Sports reporter Tom Buring shows us, many of them will be playing for something much greater than a trophy.
The newly crowned NFC champion Seattle Seahawks are competitive, they are confident, they are all in. The organization's values headline their walls. And for some Seahawk teammates and coaches, an impassioned belief is branded in their hearts.
We're not just Seahawk players, we're not just football players, but we're here for much more than that. We're followers of Christ, and it's important for people to know this about us.
No matter what happens in this game coming up, it'll be nice. You wake up happy if you win, you wake up kind of disappointed if you lose, but ultimately you're still the same. But Jesus changes us forever, and Jesus is the greatest treasure of all.
Dr. Carl Payne has been the Seahawks chaplain for 20 years. He's at the 30-yard sideline on game days. During the week, he meets with team members and is a full-time pastor at a local Seattle church.
There's too much of an image that if you love Jesus, you're soft. And our players are far from soft, and our team is far from soft. But we have a core of people that love Jesus dearly.
Regardless of a player's chapel attendance, Carl commonly serves as confidant and inspiration.
It's just good to know a guy like Carl, man. He just keeps me going, keep pushing me, and it just motivates me every week.
NFL players, coaches, and staff work in a unique profession. As chaplain, Carl is player appointed, required to give discreet pastoral care.
Encourager, trainer, somebody who tries to give the players tools that they can work with. There to serve them. They assume everybody is trying to use them. If you do not develop trust, you will not work with athletes. It's everything.
This season, Carl has watched players mature deeply in their faith, several who are team leaders, and many who have become outspoken in their convictions.
They have been willing to stick their neck out from the get-go. They want to be at Bible study whether people approve or disapprove, like it, don't like it, sticking their name out, their reputation out, saying we're going to do this and let people know. This is a platform God has given us. We're going to use it for His glory.
This weekend is football's biggest game, and the stage has expanded dramatically.
Being missional, constantly looking for opportunities to tell people about Jesus, and that's really what it's about. And that's what the hope of our team is. The brothers on the team, that we want to do well, so that ultimately we have a platform to talk about Jesus. And really, that's the best thing that we could ever do for anybody.
We want to win. We'll play to win. But this is about a platform to 130, 140 million people whose church on Sunday is in the NFL watching a game. And if we have a chance to become their church, even if it's just an opportunity for them to go, there are guys on both teams that love Jesus, that's a message we want people to hear.
That platform comes with a captive audience. And here in Seattle, the raucous 12th man has been there all season long. So a handful of players and coaches wanted to craft a message letting fans know what they believe and why. They paid for and participated in a DVD production of all things called The Making of a Champion.
Clint Gresham is the Seahawks long snapper. He pitched the idea to teammates after hearing that a Brazilian soccer player passed out a DVD of his Christian testimony at the World Cup. The Seahawks' Making of a Champion has since moved to the web and gone viral.
We wanted to use the platform that God's given us to share our faith, and everybody worships this God called the NFL, and we want to introduce them to the real King.
It's really just us using our avenue where we're at to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ.
An avenue runs from 12 Seahawks Way, leading to the heart of their city and beyond. For quarterback Russell Wilson, it's a road that's paved with purpose.
Russell, we know you to be prepared. We know you to be poised. How does your faith carry you?
In terms of my faith, I believe that I'm here for a reason, and that's what I told the guys. I believe that we were in the NFC Championship for a reason. I believe that God placed me in this city for a reason. That never wavers for me. I'm going to trust that the Lord's put me here, and I'm excited about the game. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the moment, and hopefully it's the best 60 minutes of my life.
Now we're in the Super Bowl. This was a dream for me as a child, and to be living it, there's no better opportunity than there is now. God had every day planned out for you, and that He knew every struggle, He knew every pain, He knew the things that you loved most. And in that, He set a purpose specifically just for you. And it's so refreshing to know that, and to know that God's on your side, and to know that He's for you.
In Seattle, they're redefining what makes a champion.
Understand that the eternal perspective has to trump things of time. 3.4 years was an average NFL career. The walk with Christ is going to last a lot longer than the other. When the tinsel and the confetti and stuff are done, it's me and Jesus. The price of your soul was the death of the Lord Jesus. If the price is the same, then the value is the same. They're locked on that. Well, they understand that in the context of winning or losing. I am valuable because I belong to Christ. End of story.
The Super Bowl may be topping the headlines this week, but another big story has rocked the entertainment world for months now. I'm talking about the Christian rapper Lecrae. He soared to the top of both the Christian and secular music charts, appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and even attended a birthday party for Billy Graham. I sat down with the rising star and asked him about being an anomaly.
How did I fall in this? No condition that get a mention, but you offer this unconditional.
All I Need Is You is just one hit single from Lecrae's latest record-breaking project.
The concept of the album is embracing the fact that you're different. In many ways, you're going to be an outcast.
The album is called Anomaly, and it's just that, the first to ever land simultaneously at the top of the Billboard and gospel music charts.
#1 on Billboard, being invited to sit in with the Roots on NBC's Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Gladys Knight tweeting she's listening to your music and loves it. Why do you think the world is praising you?
It's an anomaly. But it's very obvious that it's God's handiwork. it's very obvious that, he's showing off and saying, hey, guess what? This independent guy, many of you don't know, who loves me, is right here. How did it happen? Nobody knows, because I did it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, haha.
The Houston native started his own record label, Reach Records, more than 10 years ago. This husband and father describes himself as something that doesn't quite fit. A humble hip-hop artist whose music doesn't glorify sex, drugs, or violence. Plus, he's an outspoken Christian. Do you like being labeled a Christian rap artist?
I like being labeled a Christian. I think Christian is a wonderful noun and not a great adjective. I think the noun Christian is this person is a devout follower, and that's great. I think when you say this is Christian table or this is a Christian shirt, what does that really mean? And so I think sometimes it can actually hinder my personal mission by having that label on my music, just because I don't know it. Some people say, oh, he's a Christian rapper. That means it's for Christians. Or he's a Christian rapper. That means it's not good. So, yeah.
With more than a half dozen albums under his belt, Lecrae wants to reach all audiences with his music. Just a year ago, his Gravity project won the Grammy for Best Gospel Album.
Anomaly is your 7th album. How has your music changed since the first?
My music has changed in the same ways that I have. I've just grown as a man. I think there's a confidence now in some of my experiences in life. When I started out, I was just regurgitating things I was learning on the fly. So learning something, learning it, spit it out, learn it, spit it out. I've seen my children born. I've seen children die. And that shaped me. And I'm not saying I'm done, but the music has the residue of that shaping.
That residue includes the pain of being molested, abused, and taking a girlfriend to have an abortion when he was much younger.
I think leaders lead in vulnerability. I think you can trust a vulnerable person. I think the airs and the guards are taken down, and people can find healing. It's said that hurt people, but healed people heal people. And I can talk about those things because I'm healed, and it helps other people find a sense of healing, and to be able to go there and pull those things out of their own closets and deal with them.
Let me get you count money to the ceiling. Difference between us like at least a couple million.
And the audience for Lecrae's healing message continues to grow. He made his acting debut in the film Believe Me. Just as Anomaly began its steady climb up the music charts.
The album wasn't for me, it's for everyone. It was for people to be able to embrace being the people that God's made them to be, and being okay with that. Not marveling at the anomalies that we've seen, like, wow, Martin Luther King, what an anomaly. But saying, hey, guess what? It's your role too, is to stand up and stand out.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, New York.
You can always go to our website at cbnnews.com for the latest news and groundbreaking stories you won't find anywhere else. Just like this next story. We first told you about blood moons nearly a year ago, and more than 1 million people have watched it online. Many say that when these mysterious signs in the sky appear, it means something big is about to happen in Israel and the Middle East and possibly the world. We saw 2 blood moons in 2014, with 2 more coming this year. Eric Steckelbeck talked with author John Hagee about what they could mean in the year ahead and beyond.
The book of Genesis says God uses the sun, moon, and stars for signs and seasons. Examples can be found throughout the Bible. Think of how a star led the wise men to Jesus, or the sun stood still as Joshua led Israel to victory over its enemies. According to Pastor John Hagee, God is getting ready to speak this way once again.
There's a sense in the world that things are changing, and God is trying to communicate with us in a supernatural way. I believe that in these next 2 years, we're going to see something dramatic happen in the Middle East involving Israel that will change the course of history in the Middle East and impact the whole world.
In his latest book, 4 Blood Moons, Hagee lays out what he calls celestial signals. He describes how a series of blood moons in 2014 and 2015 will have great significance for Israel. Although single blood moons are a fairly regular occurrence, 4 of them appearing so closely together is extremely rare. We've only seen a series of blood moons a handful of times over the past 500 years. So what exactly is a blood moon, and what is the biblical significance of it?
A blood moon is when the earth comes between the sun and the moon, and the sun is shining through the atmosphere of the earth and cast upon the moon a red shadow, and so the moon appears to be red.
Such moons appear in Scripture. In the book of Joel, God says there will be wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. In Acts, the Apostle Peter repeats that verse from Joel. And the book of Revelation says that during the Great Tribulation, the moon will become like blood.
The sun and the moon and the earth are controlled by God Almighty. He is the one that's getting them in a direct alignment on a certain day at a certain time, but each time it's a Passover or Sukkot.
In the past, the rare appearance of 4 blood moons on these feast days has coincided with major events for Israel and the Jewish people. 1492, Spain expelled the Jews. Columbus also discovered America, which became a safe haven for the Jewish people.
In each of these blood moons, you have something that begins with a tragedy and ends in triumph.
1948, Israel is reborn as a nation.
After 2,000 years, God supernaturally brought them from 66 nations, and a nation was born in a day. That, again, was a supernatural something that happened following the tragedy of the Holocaust.
1967, Israel wins the Six-Day War and recaptures Jerusalem.
For the first time in 2,000 years, Jerusalem and the state of Israel were together again.
We already witnessed 2 blood moons in 2014, and they coincided with major events in the Middle East and the world. A war between Israel and Hamas, the rise of ISIS and the emergence of a new caliphate in Syria and Iraq, terrorism increasing around the world, Russia seizing the Crimea, and anti-Semitism on the march in Europe. Then there are continued attempts by the world to strike a deal with Iran, which promised to only increase in 2015.
The only reason Iran will not develop a nuclear bomb will be that Israel chooses a military solution to that crisis. I believe if that happens, that will start a series of events that will change the course of world history. If Israel does not, it will still change the course of world history.
Hagee warns of the Iranian nuclear threat through his work with Christians United for Israel, which he founded in 2006. It is now the largest pro-Israel organization in America, with some 1.3 million members.
If there was ever a time for the Christians of America to stiffen their spine and stand up and speak up, it's now. To see evil and not call it evil is evil.
He says it's still unclear what the coming blood moons will bring, but he is certain of one thing.
When all is said and done, Israel is going to prevail. The flag of Israel will be flying over the walls of the city of Jerusalem when Messiah comes, and it's going to be forever. And every nation that rises up in judgment against Israel, God will punish and punish severely.
Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, San Antonio, Texas.
CBN News keeps you on the cutting edge of events around the world, from the Russian invasion of Ukraine to Israel's battle with Hamas terrorists to the fight against the deadly Ebola virus. There's been plenty of conflict to cover this past year, but in the midst of covering these tumultuous events, we get a chance to report on how God is using those involved in these conflicts, how He's touching their lives. It is a view you will rarely find anywhere else. The battle for Ukraine's future erupted into a full-blown crisis early in 2014.
And the moment you enter this area, you can smell it. Your clothes begin to smell like smoke. Look at the ground. It's just black from the fires that have been burning here for several weeks.
I found myself surrounded by a throng of ordinary Ukrainians like Evgeny Sukhanov, who had spent weeks in the capital city Kiev demanding an end to corruption and Russian interference.
I'm here to fight against the evils of my government.
At times it felt like Ukraine was on the brink of civil war. But standing in the gap, literally, and praying for peace were men like Father Theodorsky Ivashko and many other Christians who risked their lives to bring calm.
It happened just a few feet from here. Hundreds of Ukrainian police stood on one side and anti-government demonstrators on the other, and we took our place in the middle, calling for calm.
The ensuing months brought even more chaos and potential war with Russia.
The drama unfolding here outside the Crimean parliament comes at a very tenuous time here for the folks in southern Ukraine.
I was in the Crimean capital the day thousands of Russian forces captured the strategic port city. Weeks later,
you see, on April 12th, insurgents armed with Kalashnikovs took control of his city.
A new front opened along Ukraine's eastern border as pro-Russian fighters seized control of key cities. How did the pro-Russian separatists treat the Christians of Slavyansk?
They didn't treat us as well because they consider the Orthodox Church far superior than any other church. They also believe that Protestant Christians are American spies since the America is enemy. Evangelical Christians are also enemy.
CBN News was one of the only news organizations to highlight how the Orthodox Church, using pro-Russian rebels, was persecuting Ukraine's evangelical community.
When I was in prison, a rebel soldier told me that they have an order to kill all Christian pastors who are not part of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Several Christians, including Elena Velichko's husband, were reportedly killed by pro-Russian rebels for their faith. She spoke exclusively to CBN News about forgiving her husband's killers. If war in Ukraine wasn't tense enough,
here in Jerusalem's old city, Shin Bet, Israel's equivalent of the FBI, is for the next 3 days on high alert.
The summer of 2014 found me in the thick of the Israel-Hamas war, reporting on the conflict from the Gaza Strip.
This is what's left of one of two minarets that used to stand tall here along the Gaza Strip, not too far from the Mediterranean. It was a major mosque. It was apparently hit by 7 Israeli missiles. The Israeli government makes the argument that places like mosques, hospitals, and densely populated areas are routinely used by Hamas to fire off their rockets.
In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Archbishop Alexios, Gaza's most prominent Christian leader, told me Hamas was even using churches to launch rockets into Israel, a fact no other media was reporting. From the Gaza front lines,
the key to fighting this deadly disease, awareness and prevention. Operation Blessing is partnering with numerous local churches, especially in the small towns and villages of Liberia. Today they're handing out buckets with the message, stay safe from Ebola.
I traveled to the Ebola hot zone in Liberia.
You got the oil? Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Documenting how CBN's Operation Blessing was bringing life-saving supplies to tens of thousands of people affected by the deadly disease.
We can't take it to the house, so we're going to leave it on the step here for them.
Exercising caution.
Thank you for your generosity.
Of course, brother.
We are in appreciation.
Yeah, we understand.
Highly appreciated and knowledgeable of your generosity.
Reporting on the Ebola virus was like nothing I'd ever done in my journalistic career.
In addition to the usual security checks that you have to perform when seeing a head of state, here in Liberia, we have to wash our hands with chlorine before meeting with the president.
I got an exclusive interview with Liberia's president and vice president, both of whom told CBN News that the country was turning the corner in its fight against the virus.
We're beginning to see a little bit of a reduction in the incidences. across country.
But the fight to contain the disease is far from over, as health workers try desperately to stamp out the virus. 2014 was indeed a turbulent year, from the rise of the Islamic State to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza to the deadly Ebola virus. For major events, CBN News takes you there with in-depth analysis and God's perspective on the game-changing events that shape the world. George Thomas, CBN News.
Coming up, she's known on the internet simply as the brave German woman. And this phone video of her has gone viral. Find out what she did and why.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Does God still heal today?
I knew that something miraculous had happened to me.
I was born deaf, and then my ears got healed.
You know, you can put your trust in medicine, but the ultimate healing is going to have to be God.
When they took that second scan, and it came back completely negative, like just gone.
Find out how God still heals today in Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Be Healed. Available now.
In size, Heidi Mund is just a small woman, but she took a very public stand that had a worldwide impact. Dale Hurd brings us the remarkable story from Germany of one woman who stood alone when no one else would.
It was supposed to be an interfaith concert to bring Christianity and Islam together. But when the Muslim imam began his call to prayer, he was interrupted by a small woman in the balcony, proclaiming that Jesus Christ is Lord of Germany and saying, "I break this curse." She also invoked the name of Martin Luther and warned the audience that what was happening was a lie. The video went viral, and this mysterious Christian lady became known on the internet simply as the brave German woman. It happened at the Memorial Church of the Reformation in the Rhineland city of Speyer, built to honor Martin Luther. This isn't just a church. It's a monument to the Protestant Reformation and a memorial to the spiritual transformation of Germany as a nation. And it was at this spiritual landmark that a Muslim imam was invited to give the call to prayer in a concert. When the brave German woman, whose real name is Heidi Mund, heard about the event, she prayed.
I was asking Jesus, I said, Lord, shall I go there? And there was so you know, when I have to drive 1.5 hours, so I think about, is it worth to go or can others go? And so this is, I think, a human laziness, yes?
She grabbed her German flag emblazoned with the words, Jesus Christ is Lord, and she went to the concert, still not sure what she would do when she got there.
Till the imam started with his shouting, I did not really know what to do. I had my thoughts, but I was not sure. I was just prepared for what God wants me to do.
Then the Muslim call to prayer began, and Heidi said she felt something rising up inside her.
I would call it an holy anger. And then I rose my flag, and I was proclaiming that Jesus Christ is Lord over Germany.
Jesus Christus allein ist Herr über Deutschland. Ich zerbreche diesen Fluch.
And by purpose, I broke this curse because this Allahu Akbar, they say with it, only Allah is the Lord. Yeah, He is Lord, He is God, and the only God. And I broke this curse in this church, and I broke it over my country.
And she repeated the words of Martin Luther in 1521 after he refused to recant his faith in Scripture alone. Here I stand. I can do no other.
Und ich stehe hier und ich kann nicht anders. Es ist die Kirche von Martin Luther. Ich stehe hier und ich kann nicht anders. Das ist ein Konzert wird für den Frieden. Nein, ist es nicht. Allahu Akbar wird gerufen, wenn gemordet wird. Lasst euch nicht täuschen. Lasst euch nicht täuschen. Es ist eine Lüge.
She was thrown out of the church.
They should have thrown the imam out of the church and not me, because I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. But he serves another God. This Allah is not the same God, and this is not the truth. This Allahu Akbar, so I think in general most of us know they use it when they kill people. This is for me, it's an worship to an idol. Yeah, to their God. It's a worship, and they bring this blood offering to their God. And when the Muslims call Allahu Akbar in a church, that means this church is not a church anymore, it's a mosque.
With Heidi at the concert was Kamel and Marian. Before coming to Germany, Kamel lived in the Muslim world, and he told us that an imam has no place in a church.
Islam is one of the reasons for persecution. Muslims have persecuted me. They don't want me to tell others that Jesus Christ is my Savior.
Marian belongs to an anti-Islamization group calling itself the White Rose, taking the same name as the World War II anti-Nazi resistance group, shown in the film Sophie Scholl, The Final Days.
Islam is inhuman, the same as in the Nazi time. For me, personally, there is no difference. We want to show Germany and the world that we will not bow down to the slow Islamization of our country.
Heidi knows that her first television interview could place her in even greater danger.
People asked me, do you have fear? Are you afraid of the Muslims? And I only can say, no, I'm not afraid of them. I know my God, the living God of the Bible, can protect me as long as he wants. When my time is over, I will go to him.
An evangelist by gifting, Heidi grew up as an atheist in communist East Germany, but now as a believer. Her burden and her ministry is for the spiritual rebirth of Germany.
I feel I have to protect my country and my people. I'm only a little woman, but I feel I have to protect them.
Dass so jemand hier sprechen kann wie Hitler. Ich schäme mich. Wo seid ihr? Warum steht ihr nicht auf in unserem Land? Warum nicht?
Many people associate Germany with the Nazis, but Germany was once a base for world missions, sending missionaries to Africa, Korea, and to America. Heidi Munt is trusting God to do a miracle in what today is a very wealthy, and some would say, spiritually dead nation.
Well, nothing is impossible for my God. Nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. From a human point of view, I feel that our country is lost. It's already lost. It's done. But I trust God that he has a plan A. And that my country is not lost, that he will reach us and he will come and change the whole situation.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Western Germany.
What if the government ordered you to do something that violates your deeply held values, including your religious beliefs? And if you refuse, they tell you you're breaking the law. Well, that's what happened to one Christian baker in Colorado. But as Mark Martin reports, his story isn't over yet.
The sign on the door reads, "Celebrating 20 years of great cakes." And during that time, Lakewood, Colorado's Masterpiece Cake Shop has created art in the form of baked goods to keep customers coming back.
And what do you want it to say?
From cookies and cupcakes to signature cakes. Check out the mountain landscape on this one. Jack Phillips and his daughter Lisa have transformed their bakery into a studio. All of it, Jack says, inspired and motivated by his faith in Jesus Christ.
The most important thing that I think about throughout the day when I wake up, when I go to work, I want to know that what I'm doing is pleasing to him, that I honor him and his word, because that's the most important thing.
Jack's Christian faith landed him in trouble with the law. His crime? Adhering to his biblical belief that marriage is between one man and one woman. In 2012, a homosexual couple sued Jack after he declined to make a cake to celebrate their marriage. An administrative law judge ruled against him, and the Colorado Civil Rights Commission agreed. The commission stated Jack's refusal went against the state's public accommodation law. It requires businesses to serve customers regardless of their sexual orientation. In a public statement, one member of the Civil Rights Commission said, "I can believe anything I want, but if I'm going to do business here, I'd ought to not discriminate against people."
I didn't discriminate against anybody. Like Nicole said, I've chosen not to make cakes for same-sex weddings. I told David and Charlie when they came in that I would sell them cookies and brownies and birthday cakes and shower cakes. I just don't do the same-sex wedding cake. So I did not discriminate against them, just that event that I've chosen not to participate in.
Jack's attorney, Nicole Martin, says the commission violated Jack's First Amendment rights, and she's taken the case to the Colorado Court of Appeals. The Civil Rights Commission's order requires Jack and his staff to make cakes for same-sex celebrations if asked. He must also re-educate his staff about Colorado's Anti-Discrimination Act. Under that law, artists must endorse all views. The order also requires him to put in place new policies to comply with the commission's order. In addition, he will submit quarterly compliance reports to the government for 2 years. According to Alliance Defending Freedom, the reports must include the number of customers declined a wedding cake or any other product and include why, so to ensure he has fully eliminated his religious beliefs from his business.
The government has chosen which message it favors in this case. I think the state has made it very clear. Jack's First Amendment rights, Jack's freedom to express himself, or more importantly, not express himself, must bow to the complainant's message. And all I can say is what that looks like to me is something very frightening. And that's nothing more than diversity through conformity. And that's not diversity at all.
Jack Phillips' case is one of a handful in which complainants sued private businesses for refusing to accommodate gay couples getting married. It also helped lead to controversial proposals in several states, allowing businesses to decline service based on the religious beliefs of owners.
This case is not about, and it never has been about, the young men that came in here almost 2 years ago asking Jack to design and create their cake. This case has always been about the message that that cake expresses, what that cake communicates.
It's surprising. This is not what they taught us in civics class. They could do this to you. They do this in other countries, not here.
So Jack stands on the First Amendment. In this case, we're going to learn whether the First Amendment has a future in America.
And in a country founded on freedom of religion and speech, that's a future important to all Americans. Mark Martin, CBN News, Lakewood, Colorado.
You could have a serious health problem and not even know it. It's called inflammation, and it could be behind heart disease, arthritis, cancer, and dozens of other diseases. But you can fight it by changing your eating habits. And as Lori Johnson tells us, you might even lose some weight while you're doing it.
Mark Sisson is the picture of health. At the age of 60, yes, 60, he has the body of a man half his age, inside and out. No disease, no medications. But he hasn't always been this way. His anti-inflammatory diet changed everything.
Most of what ails people today could be, if not cured, substantially mitigated with a few lifestyle corrections, first and foremost being diet.
Mark follows the paleo diet.
If you've heard of the paleo diet but aren't really sure what it is, you're not alone. It was the #1 search diet on Google last year.
For the last 25 years, Mark has analyzed nutrition research. 2.5 million readers follow Mark's work.
We've got hundreds of thousands of user experiences on my site, on Mark's Daily Apple, of people who've embraced this program, who've said, so not only did I lose the weight, but my blood work improved, and my energy levels improved.
The paleo diet involves avoiding sugar, wheat, trans or omega-6 fats, and some dairy.
When you get rid of all those bad guys, you decrease inflammation, and you improve your body's ability to burn fat.
Sugar weakens your immune system and causes insulin problems. Wheat treats your body much the same way. Mark didn't even realize wheat caused him problems until he stopped eating it.
My IBS went away. My arthritis went away. The lingering sinus issues that I had went away. The heartburn that I used to have infrequently, but enough to be to have me carrying Pepsid AC in my wallet, that went away.
Highly inflammatory trans fats and omega-6 fats are found in many packaged foods and oils that line the grocery store shelves.
And we eliminate these industrial oils, what we call the vegetable oils that we thought 2 decades ago were so healthy for us. Turns out they're very unhealthy for us.
Many dairy products cause inflammation, allergies, and stomach problems.
So if you give up sugar, gluten, trans fats, omega-6 fats, and dairy, you may be wondering what's left to eat.
Turns out a lot.
Certainly use plants, vegetables as the main basis of the paleo eating strategy, and then great sources of protein, so meat and fish, fowl, eggs, and so on, and then healthy fats.
Healthy fats include avocados, nuts, olive oil, fish oil, and don't forget coconut oil, even though it's a saturated fat. In fact, some health experts don't believe saturated fats like beef, pork, and eggs should still be viewed as bad guys when it comes to our diet.
Some doctors still have a real issue with saturated fat because they're relying on a 20-year-old studies that were faulty to begin with, and they haven't done the research, and they haven't stayed current with dietary research. But there are thousands of doctors now who have completely shifted and are embracing this concept.
That includes Duke University's Dr. Eric Westman, who used to think saturated fat caused heart disease. Then he changed his mind.
Saturated fat, the fat that we've been taught not to eat, raises your good cholesterol best of all the food you can eat.
Of course, any diet is best combined with exercise. Looking at Mark, you might think he lives at the gym, but the truth is he barely breaks a sweat. He recommends slow movement like walking and a lot of it, outside or even at a treadmill desk. Twice a week, he recommends muscle building. Using his own weight as resistance, Mark does push-ups, squats, lunges, and sit-ups.
The tension of the muscle on the bone, it creates bone density, for instance. And we want to have strong bones as we get older.
Then once a week, a set of sprints, giving all you've got for 30-second surges of aerobic activity, like running, biking, or swimming.
That little burst of activity can have such dramatic effects on all aspects of your health. And for people who have been trying to lose weight, for instance, and are plateaued or stalled, that sprint workout can be sort of the breakthrough.
Finally, get enough sleep, because without it, your immune system suffers and you increase hormones that make you hungry.
A lot of people will get the diet right, for instance. They'll start to dial in the diet, but because they enjoy they're too tempted by the nighttime activities and they don't get enough sleep, they wonder why they're not losing that last 15 or 20 pounds. It may be because you're not getting enough sleep.
So an anti-inflammatory diet is missing sugar, wheat, processed oils, and most dairy. So you eat foods that keep you thin and healthy well into your golden years. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, you may know him from Special Report. Now, Fox News host Bret Baier shares the story closest to his heart. Life was good for Brett Baer, a popular Fox News anchor whose wife had just given birth to a healthy son, but they weren't prepared for what would happen next. Jennifer Wishon brings us this intimate look at their personal story.
Paul Baer looks and acts like a pretty normal boy about to turn 7. But so much about his young life is special.
Good evening, I'm Brett Baer.
You may recognize Paul's dad, Brett, as the anchor of Fox News Channel's Special Report. After his wife Amy's normal pregnancy and delivery, Paul, the couple's firstborn, appeared to be the picture of health. But as Brett and Amy prepared to take Paul home, a nurse they now call their guardian angel noticed his color was off. After testing, the couple learned their son had not 1 but 5 congenital heart defects. In order to survive, the Bears' 6-pound, 12-ounce baby boy needed open heart surgery. Now, 3 heart surgeries, 7 angioplasties, and 1 unrelated stomach surgery later, Brett relives the adventure in his new book, Special Heart, a journey of faith, hope, courage, and love.
Looking back, it was a hard time.
It still hits home. I mean, this many years later, we've been through this many surgeries and this many angioplasties, and you can see, I mean, it's still emotional.
It's hard looking back. That was the hardest part about this book, is having to look back.
Soon after Amy learned the news, she briefly became the oldest patient at Children's National Medical Center.
I just collapsed. And I think the stress of it all my body emotionally, I think, just shut down.
That's where we made that pact in that emergency room treating Amy, is that we decided that was the moment.
A pact to stop the self-pity and devote all their energy to Paul. From that moment, the couple decided Brett, the journalist, would take care of the medical details, and Amy would focus on being a loving mother. Each night as they left the hospital, they agreed to focus on being 1 day closer to taking Paul home with them, a daily rite they marked with a high five. The Bears later learned at that very moment, a congregation in Colorado was praying for them. For the first time, the couple truly experienced the power of prayer, and it wouldn't be the last.
And the day of Paul's heart surgery, we had a local priest come and pray with us in the little hospital chapel. And as we were praying, we were all kind of holding hands, and I had this vision of like these beams of light all around Paul's, the surgical bed. And I just knew in my heart he was going to be okay.
Church is wherever we find Christ present. And truly Christ is present in the love of this family.
Then, before Paul's surgery, the Bears, who are Roman Catholic, made another decision for their son.
Paul was going into surgery, and we realized he wasn't baptized. And, there was risk going into surgery. And we just wanted to make sure he got on God's scoreboard beforehand.
The thing that was special was that there was nothing fancy about it. It was just a curtain around a bassinet and beeps and wires, but it was all of our family.
And there's something beautiful about having family members all around Paul. And we wanted to be sure that all our family members had met Paul.
Fast forward 7 years, and young Paul is doing great. To look at his calendar full of soccer, baseball, basketball, and golf lessons, you'd never know he has a defective heart.
In fact, I was joking with his surgeon a couple weeks ago, and I said, that last surgery, if you could have just turned it down just a hair, because we have to run them like dogs to get them to sleep.
At bedtime, Paul prays for other kids with health issues, and as a veteran with the scars to prove it, he offers advice.
Don't be scared, be brave, and don't think about it. It's going to be really fast, and at the end, you're going to get a lot of special treats.
Watching Paul go through his last surgery was tough on everyone.
It was really hard going through the surgery, but I'm glad I made it through.
So is his younger brother, Daniel.
I'm my best friend, and I'm glad you helped me.
Although you may not realize it, Paul's not alone when it comes to his illness.
That stat is staggering. 1 out of 100 kids is born with a congenital heart defect, and half of them have to have some kind of surgery or procedure in the first 6 months of their life.
Many kids go undiagnosed, a tragic fact the Bears would like to help change. That's why Brett is donating every penny he makes on the book to groups working on pediatric heart disease. Paul has at least one more heart surgery in his future, along with more than a few angioplasties. It's not what they hoped for their son, but now Brett and Amy see their family's circumstance as a gift.
I feel like God tapped us for a reason, and we have a responsibility in that. And whatever our course is, I feel like we'll get through it. And I think it's strengthened our marriage and us as parents, hopefully. And we kind of put blinders on us to what's important, and we don't get distracted.
But God's plan is a big part of that. And you look back and you think, all these coincidences, there's really, you think about it, coincidence is something bigger. There's something bigger happening. Because a lot of our life, we can look back at different moments where we think, hey, this had to be a bigger plan, a blueprint.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're fortunate because we share those same values and thoughts, and together I think we make a good team.
We do. One day closer.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks for joining us for this special program from CBN News. Every weekday on the 700 Club, we bring you stories with insight and information you won't find anywhere else. I invite you to watch the 700 Club Monday through Friday and add some encouragement to your life. And whenever you need prayer, you can call us day or night at 1-800-759-0700. Also, visit us online at cbn.com. There's an incredible amount of free resources and information available for you. This is Gordon Robertson for everyone at the Christian Broadcasting Network. Thanks for being with us. God bless you, and good night.
I was behind the wheel of a car and it's about to end it all. When you go through abuse, it's like something handicaps you in that moment. My life has been, one direction, up, down, sideways. I've just been just like the trajectory of a knuckleball. God wants to love you where you are, wherever that is, in your brokenness. Like He wants to be there with you in that moment. God is in control of my life, and I'm thankful for it.